Everything's going well, and they're able to break through the gates, slaughtering everyone in the city. A human commander watches the carnage as Ike approaches him, telling him to surrender. But he refuses, and he charges in, so Ike attacks him with a magic blast, which knocks him out. Jiren arrives, but Ike orders him to help the commander recover and do the same for the injured human soldiers. We cut to Ike's superior Sephiroth as she watches his every move, and she can't believe he was able to capture Arsenum in 1 week, realizing he has potential. He uses barrier magic, preventing his minions from entering the room, and he notes that the battle is over, but he feels guilty for hurting the people, thinking he'll never get used to the bloodshed. We learn that he's actually human, and he was raised by a legendary mage named Romberg, who knew everything about ancient civilization. He shared his knowledge with Ike, and before he passed away, he told him never to speak of the ancient civilization, because it could lead to a disaster. Ike recalls that Romberg advised him to keep his identity a secret, because the Demon Lord will punish him if he discovers the truth. But as Ike continues to ponder, he sees a maid hiding, so she panics, begging him to spare her life, but she ends up hitting her head, and she loses consciousness. He realizes that his identity has been exposed, but Jiren suddenly calls him, and he asks Ike why he's sparing the humans, because the demons are used to slaughtering everyone. But he reminds Jiren that Arsenum is a trading city, so he thinks he can use the humans by imposing taxes as they continue to make profit. He meets the humans, and one of them asks him about their taxes, so he explains that they can pay him the amount they've always been paying. They're happy to hear this, but he warns them that they will be punished if they try to resist the Demon Lord's army. He suddenly gets teleported away, and he finds himself in a dark room where he gets attacked by a golem. So he falls back, realizing he has been summoned by Sephiroth, but he's upset because she promised not to summon him without warning. He uses his slashing spell, destroying the golem in a single hit, and she tells him he has gotten stronger, saying she was confident in the golem she made. We learn that she's the only demon who knows his secret, but he asks her why she summoned him, thinking she wants to know what happened at Arsenum. But she explains that she already knows everything, and she reveals that the Demon Lord wants to see him, because he was able to conquer Arsenum in 1 week, so she takes him to the Demon Lord's castle. We return to the maid, as she tries to leave, but she realizes that the room is surrounded by a barrier. She sees a note from Ike, who tells her to wait for him to return, and she sees food on the table, so she tastes it, and finds it delicious, so she starts devouring it. Ike is about to enter the Demon Lord's castle, but he sees the guards at the entrance, realizing he's going to get checked. So he becomes nervous, thinking they will ask him to remove his mask, but Sephiroth covers him with demonic energy, and one of the guards sees it, thinking he's amazing. The guard recognizes him as the grandson of Romberg, and she tells everyone not to keep the Demon Lord waiting. So the guard shows them around the castle, as Ike notes that the hallway is extremely long, and he asks Sephiroth if they're close to the audience chamber. So she tells him they're almost there, thinking he's jealous, because she doesn't need to walk, and he denies this, but we learn that it's true, because he always wanted to master the flight spell. But he can only use it to jump high, and he can't use it to levitate like she does. They reach the audience chamber, but she tells him to wait for her to return, because she needs to talk to the others first. While waiting, he thinks about the Demon Lord, knowing the demons were losing the war against humanity before he came into power. But when he ascended to the throne, he was able to score a decisive victory, which turned the tides of battle. He's known as the strongest among the demons, but he has a bad reputation, because he kills anyone he deems incompetent. But as soon as he sees value in his minions, he puts them to good use, and this is how he was able to revolutionize his army. Sephiroth tells him to enter, and he kneels before the Demon Lord, who welcomes him to the castle, telling him to raise his head. So he obeys the command, but he can't believe that the Demon Lord is actually a girl. She's impressed that he was able to conquer Arsenum in 1 week, and he tells her Sephiroth deserves all the credit, but she mentions that his humility makes him sound like a human. Sephiroth tells her he's the grandson of Romberg, and she thinks this explains everything, as she mentions that he spared the humans in the city. So he thinks he's screwed up, thinking he should have killed the human commander so that she wouldn't suspect him. But he defends his actions, saying terror doesn't work on humans, and he mentions that their productivity tends to suffer when their leader is executed. So he decided not to kill them, thinking he did the right thing for his army, because they can still use the humans. She asks him if this is Romberg's opinion, and he confirms this, but he notes that she seems to know about ancient civilization, thinking she used this knowledge to revolutionize her army. She tells him he's nothing like the other demons, saying she wants to see his face behind the mask, but she heads out, telling him she expects much from him. After she leaves, he freaks out, wondering how she knew he was wearing a mask, but Sephiroth tells him to be grateful that she didn't discover his secret, saying he's been given a new task. Ike returns to Arsenum, and he sees the maid sleeping, so he wakes her up, and she begs him not to hurt her, saying she'll do anything for him. So he promises not to kill her, and he asks for her name, so she tells him it's Sadie. He explains that he can't let her go, because she knows he's a human, but she promises to keep it a secret, so he tells her to serve as his maid, and she thanks him for sparing her life. The next day, they head to the city of Avelias, as Jiren congratulates Ike for becoming its new ruler. We learn that Sephiroth told him about his new task, telling him his mission is to protect the city and double its tax revenue. But he knows this is going to be tough, because it's on the front line, so the humans could attack at any time. He realizes that everything in the city has been destroyed, because Sephiroth rained fire when she captured it. He orders Jiren to repair the walls, but he mentions that it will take 6 months, and Ike isn't happy to hear this, knowing they're doomed if the humans attack them before the walls are repaired. So he tells Jiren to finish it in 1 month, saying he will get the humans to help them. After that, we see the humans working with the demons, and Jiren can't believe this, because this has never happened before. He notes that Ike is full of surprises, thinking he's a genius, because everyone's happy with his arrangement. He sees a group of orcs struggling to lift a boulder, so he tells them to step away, and he destroys it with his spell. Jiren thinks he has the potential to become the next demon lord, so he decides to stay with him, thinking it would be a mistake to leave him. We see an army of demons attacking a city, as the mages try to stop them, but they press on, as a demon launches a boulder, destroying the wall. They're able to enter the city, and they start killing the soldiers, as the demon lord receives a report that the war with Rosaria is going well, but they're forming an alliance with their neighbors to turn the tables. So she thinks the fight is about to get interesting, and she decides to let Ike handle it. We meet the leader of Rosaria, Galros, as he summons Ali, the commander of the White Knights. He orders her to retake Avelias, saying they can't let the other nations take advantage of them, and she accepts the mission. Meanwhile, we see a man challenging everyone to find a ball, as he hides it under one of his cups. Sadie accepts the challenge, but he asks her how much she's willing to bet, and she mentions that she's broke. So he tells her she can't play, but he realizes she has a great body, so he tells her she can bet something else. He's about to open the cup she chose, but a gust of wind lifts all of his cups, and everyone realizes he's cheating, because the ball is nowhere to be found. So they beat him up, and Ike asks her what she was doing, telling her to stay by his side. So she apologizes for her behavior, saying she got too excited, and she realizes he isn't disguised as a demon. So he explains that he's trying to blend in, reminding her that their goal is to scout the enemy. They see a group of soldiers in the city, as he realizes that the story about the Alliance of Kings is true, but she doesn't understand what's happening, so she asks him what's going on. He explains that the humans have an ancient alliance, where the countries join forces to deal with a threat, and they have only done this 3 times, but each time the alliance was formed, they were able to defeat the demon lord. So Sadie is worried, thinking the demons are going to lose, but he reminds her she's human, so she's going to be fine even if this happens. But she explains that she's just a slave to the humans, and they won't treat her well if he abandons her, so he tells her not to worry, because the demons won't lose the war. They're suddenly interrupted by the man who cheated, and he knows that Ike was the one who exposed him, so he threatens to take everything from him. But Ike realizes nobody's watching them, and he casts a spell, surrounding the man with ice. He tells the man to answer his questions, but he refuses to cooperate, so Ike stabs him, and he realizes that Ike is serious, so he agrees to do it. Ike asks him about the soldiers in the town, and he reveals that they've formed the Alliance of Kings to fight the demons. But he mentions that Rosaria wants to strike a decisive blow against the Demon Lord's army before the Alliance makes a move. Ike realizes Rosaria is doing this to win glory, so that the other nations in the Alliance will look up to them, but he knows their reputation is going to suffer if they fail. He asks the man about their target, so he reveals that it's Avelia's, because it's the most vulnerable city on the front line, and Ike heads out, as the man begs him to remove the ice shards. Ike returns to Avelia's, where a girl named Lilith approaches him, asking him where he's been. So he explains that he was scouting Rosaria, but she asks him about Sadie, who introduces herself as his maid. But Lilith thinks she's too ugly to be his maid, telling him to accept her as his maid instead. But Sadie tells him he's tired, saying she was the one chosen to be his maid, and they start fighting over him. Later that day, the White Knights reach Avelia's, thinking it's poorly guarded, and Allie orders her men to fire the catapults. But a horde of skeletons suddenly appear as the demons attack them from behind, catching them by surprise. Allie realizes they're about to get wiped out, so she orders everyone to retreat, and Ike finds her impressive, thinking she made the right call. But we see an archer behind him, and he ends up getting shot, and he collapses, so Jiren calls for help. That evening, Galros learns about Allie's defeat, thinking it's unacceptable, so he orders the messenger to arrest her. But the messenger asks him if he's sure, reminding him that she's one of the best generals in Rosaria, but he doesn't care, thinking she needs to take responsibility for her actions. When Ike wakes up, he sees Saphiro beside him, so he becomes confused, asking her what happened. So she explains that he got shot, but she has already healed his wounds, and he thanks her for saving his life. But she warns him that the Demon Lord might find him suspicious because he didn't kill a single human when the White Knights attacked them. But he explains that he wants humans and demons to coexist, and she tells him he needs to rest because he still hasn't fully recovered, and she teleports away. He sees the arrow that hit him, and he wonders who tried to kill him, but there's a knock at his door, so he wears his disguise. Lilith and Sadie join him, but Lilith tells Sadie to stay away, telling her she can't be with him because she's just a human. So they start fighting over him again, but Lilith gets thrown outside as Jiren arrives. Ike asks him about Allie, so he reveals that she was imprisoned because she failed to retake Avelia's. Ike decides to pay her a visit, but Lilith joins him, telling him it's too dangerous to go alone. He tells her he just wants to talk to Allie, saying he doesn't need help, but she explains that she wants to spend time with him, so he tells her to keep a low profile. They see soldiers guarding the gate, and he tells her they should sneak past them, but she beats them up, telling him his problem has been solved. They enter the prison, realizing it's bigger than they thought, so it will take time to find Allie. But Lilith knocks a guard out, and she steals his keys, saying she was able to interrogate him, and he told her Allie is on the top floor. The guards see them, so she tells him she will take care of them, and he orders her to avoid unnecessary bloodshed. But he hears their bones breaking, and he sees one of them asking for help, but he decides to ignore them. He reaches Allie's cell, but he wonders where she is, because the room appears to be empty. She suddenly attacks him, trying to stab him, but he knocks her down, and she wonders what he wants. So he tells her he just wants to ask her a question, asking her if she sent an assassin to kill him. But she wonders if he's really a demon, and he sees the guards approaching, as she suddenly threatens him, asking him if he's actually a human. She tells him not to move, but he casts a spell, which paralyzes everyone around him, and she thinks he's stopped time. But he reveals that he just dulled their senses. He turns to the guards, and uses his magic to blow them away. But a knight suddenly attacks him, so he uses his gravity spell, which pushes the knight to the ground, and the floor ends up breaking. He falls to the bottom, but Ike saves him, so Allie wonders why he isn't killing the guards. The floor collapses, and she's about to fall to her death, but Ike catches her, and he introduces himself, telling her he's the commander of the Undying Brigade. So she realizes he was in Avelia's when she tried to retake it, and he tells her that a member of the Demon Lord's army can't possibly be human. He asks her if she sent an assassin to kill him, but she refuses to answer, so he approaches her and reads her mind. But Lilith sees them, thinking they're having an intimate moment, so she asks him what he's doing, telling him to stop flirting with Allie, because he doesn't need a side chick, telling him he can do whatever he wants with her. But he ignores her, and he walks away, but Allie stops him, thinking he visited her just to mock her. But he tells her this isn't the case, and he explains that he has already read her mind, so he knows she isn't involved in the assassination attempt. He advises her not to be so hard on herself, saying she should learn to move on, but she doesn't understand what he means. He tells Lilith it's time to leave, and she asks him if he wants to spend more time with her before they go home. But he turns her down, and he opens a portal, which takes them back to Avelia's. Ike returns home, and Sadie welcomes him back. He reveals that he has a present for her, saying he found it in the capital, but she doesn't recognize it, so he tells her it's rice. He reminds her about his goal to double the amount of taxes they receive, and he explains that Avelia's is an agricultural city which is focused on growing wheat. But he thinks it's better to grow rice because they need less farmers to produce it, so they will have more people available in the city who can add value by offering their services in other business ventures. He thinks this will help Avelia's prosper, but Sadie doesn't understand his explanation, so he tells her their lives will improve if they follow his plan, and she supports him, thinking he's brilliant. He tells her to cook the rice, but she doesn't know how to do it, and he admits that he's never done it before. But he gives her vague instructions, and she promises to do her best. We see Ike gathering his army, and Jiren asks him why he summoned all of them, so Ike tells him he's about to find out. He thinks about the assassination attempt, knowing the arrow belonged to the humans, but Allie knew nothing about it. So he thinks the assassin wanted to make it look like the humans killed him, and he believes there's a spy in his army. So he uses his mind-reading spell, and he immediately realizes that Jiren is his #1 fan, so he thinks Jiren needs to be more careful when he's around him. Ike goes through the thoughts of his men, and he realizes that a goblin is worried that he might get exposed, so Ike approaches him, asking him if he's a spy. That evening, Ike visits Sephiroth, who asks him what he needs from her, but he realizes she's taking a bath, so he decides to wait for her outside. But she asks him if there's a traitor, wondering who it is, so he tells her it's Vice Commander Jace, but she isn't surprised, because she found him suspicious. Ike knows that he's a talented warrior, asking her what they should do, so she explains that they need to make him pay. We see Jace with his men, and he's surprised to learn that Ike has already recovered, so he asks the assassin if he messed up, but he explains that he shot Ike through his chest. They suddenly receive a report, and Jace learns that they have lost contact with his spy in the Undying Brigade. So he's worried that they have been exposed, and he thinks about gathering his men to launch an attack, but a soldier tells him that Ike has come to see him. So he meets with Ike, asking him if he's alone, and he confirms this, as he wonders why Jace brought his army with him. But he tells Ike it's none of his business, saying he's careless for getting injured in the last battle, and he admits that Jace has a point, because he should have been careful around traitors. So Jace realizes that he already knows the truth, but he calls Ike an idiot, because he shouldn't have come alone. But he asks Jace if he brought his entire army with him, and there's suddenly an explosion, as fire starts raining from the sky, so he realizes he's in danger, and he runs away with his men. We see Sephiroth summoning the fireballs, and she realizes that Ike is still in the city, but she doesn't care, thinking he's going to be fine. Ike takes cover, realizing Sephiroth is destroying everything, so he becomes upset, because he told her to limit her attacks, so that it would be easier to rebuild after they get rid of Jace. She orders her minions to attack, so they start slaughtering Jace's men, as he watches the carnage. Ike appears behind him, telling him to surrender before his army gets wiped out, but he orders his men to attack him, so he uses his magic to defend himself. Jace's soldiers are looking for him, but he avoids them, planning to sacrifice them so that he can escape. Ogre attacks him, so he throws a smoke bomb, and he escapes through a portal, which takes him to his secret path. He notes that he's the only one who knows the area, so his enemies won't be able to follow him, and he promises to get revenge on Sephiroth, but he suddenly gets attacked by Ike. He wonders how Ike was able to find him, so he explains that his familiar followed him, telling him to give up. But Jace charges in, so Ike uses his spell to push him back, and he restrains him, telling him it's all over for him. So Jace admits defeat, but he invites Ike to join his group, saying their goal is to overthrow the Demon Lord. He explains that the demons enjoy senseless violence, but the Demon Lord doesn't allow them to kill for no reason, so they decided to oppose her. Ike refuses to join them, so Jace attacks him, but he counters with his paralysis spell. He asks Jace about his group, and Sephiroth joins them, planning to torture him, but he suddenly starts struggling, and Ike realizes he has been poisoned. So he tries to cure him, but it doesn't work, and Sephiroth explains that Jace must have been poisoned by his allies. She tells him they've given up on him, and she promises to avenge him if he gives her their names. So he decides to cooperate, and he ends up dying. Ike thinks he deserves it, but he still feels sorry for him, thinking it's because his heart is still human. Ike and Saphiro report to the Demon Lord, as Saphiro tells her everything that happened, saying that Bastio, the head of the third corpse, was the one behind it. But the Demon Lord wonders if it's really the truth, as Bastio suddenly appears. He claims that they are the ones who were plotting against him, and that they killed Jace to frame him, because they are after his position. Saphiro is annoyed by his accusation, but the Demon Lord tells her to calm herself. She knows that the stronger a demon becomes, the more power they will want, so it's natural for them to want more. She tells Bastio she knows what he was up to, but also tells Saphiro she failed to maintain Jace's loyalty, so they should both be punished. But she doesn't want to lose two commanders while they are at war with the humans, so she tells them they will have a duel, and she will side with the winner. Saphiro gets ready, and we learn the duel will be held using puppets. Each commander will control 50 of them, and the commander that loses all their puppets first will be killed. Ike wonders why they don't just fight directly, so Saphiro mentions the Demon Lord is testing their abilities as commanders. She also mentions they can appoint a stand-in, so she decides to send Ike in her place. He can't believe she would send him, since her life is on the line, but she says it's the best chance for her to win, telling him his talent as a commander has already exceeded her, so she entrusts her life to him. We see Ike at the arena with Jiren, and they go to check out the puppets. We learn they're all equal in strength, so they are just to test the ability to command, and they are free to use any weapons. Ike goes back to his room, and he thinks about his strategy. He asks Sadie what she thinks is the best way to win a battle, but she has no idea. So he asks what she would do if she got in a fight, but she says she would rather solve things over a cup of tea. She says she would fight with a broom if she really got into a fight, and Ike thinks using a longer weapon like a spear is advantageous, or even bows to attack from far away. The best way to win is to strike from afar, but he knows the strategy is too obvious. Sadie remembers hearing about the crossbows of Arsenum, and Ike thinks they are a good idea, because they are easier to use than bows, and can even pierce through metal, but he thinks it's still not enough. He suddenly gets an idea, thinking he can make guns, and Sadie wonders how strong they are. He mentions they're stronger and can shoot further than a crossbow, so Sadie wonders how he can make a gun. He notes that Saphiro is a powerful alchemist, so he's sure she'll be able to help him. But when he goes to see her, she tells him she has her limits, because she can't make something she has never seen. So Ike tries to describe it to her, but she just splashes him with water, telling him to join her. Meanwhile, we see Bastio preparing, as a soldier reports that Ike will be the one participating in the duel. Bastio examines a sword, as we learn it's made from the fangs of a black dragon, so it can cut through anything, and he thinks he's going to win. Ike finishes having a bath, and he's still worrying about the duel. His shirt flies over to him, so he thanks Saphiro, but it turns out to be the Demon Lord. He starts freaking out, since he's not wearing his mask, but thinks she might not recognize him without it. She gives him a gift, and it turns out to be the guns he's looking for. He pretends he is an Ike, but she knows the truth, because his master Romberg already told her everything. He wonders why she kept him around knowing that he's human, but she says it's to make her wish come true. She wants to build her own world, but no matter how strong she is, she needs people to serve and fight for her. She knows he will be useful to her, so she asks for his answer, and he agrees to continue serving her. Ike shows the guns to Saphiro, telling her to make bullets, but she makes it way too big, and he tells her they need to fit into the gun, so she makes them smaller. There's suddenly an explosion, and a demon named Fiorin appears, saying they have successfully created the gunpowder he asked for. The day of the duel arrives, as everyone gets excited. We see Ike with his puppets, but Bastio laughs at him because they only have shields. Ike notices that Bastio has fully geared his puppets with Damascus steel, as Bastio boasts it as the strongest metal, so no spear or arrow will be able to harm his puppets. He notes it was a gift from the Demon Lord, so he thinks she must want him to win. Ike wonders if she was just making it an even fight, or if she's testing him. The duel begins, and Bastio orders his puppets to fire their arrows. Ike tells his puppets to block, but they start to get taken out. Bastio wonders if he can do anything besides defending, and he thinks it's no fun. But there's suddenly a shot, taking out one of Bastio's puppets. They continue to fire, taking turns to reload, and Bastio's puppets are completely wiped out. He can't believe what happened, and the Demon Lord tells him it's over. She gives him the choice to take his own life honorably, or to die by her hand, but he chooses a third option as his assassin fires an arrow at her. She's able to catch it, but there's a bomb attached, and it suddenly explodes. Bastio's skeletons come rushing out, and he proclaims himself as the new Demon Lord, but that's where the